Breaking into advertising is no easy task. Whether you're a senior in high school or recent college graduate, I want to help you explore all the possibilities to land your dream job in the advertising industry. This week, we head down to Texas with Bart Cleveland. What a name and what a guy. We waste no time talking about his program, Job Propulsion Lab. Bart is the founder of this advertising career training program designed to spring you into the industry without paying as much as a traditional grad or portfolio school and in less time. For all areas of advertising, you can go to Bart and JPL and select packages that are catered to you and what you need. Programs can last between 4 weeks to 6 months. Located in Austin, Texas, he often works with the founders of McGarrah Jesse. They're a powerhouse agency that does work for Yeti, Whataburger, and Bach. They're very well connected down there. You'll hear him explain how it works, but regardless if you're interested or not, Bart puts out some great wisdom helpful for all advertisers. I learned that you need to learn continuously, and there is no such thing as coasting in this magical industry. Also, he's very generous. He's giving out a free portfolio critique and a single course on his website. To gain access to those and to connect with him, head to our Instagram at EnteringAd. Now on with the show. This is the Breaking and Entering Advertising podcast, and as usual, I'm your accomplice, Gino Schellenberger. Kick it, Mikey. Cleveland, welcome to the Breaking and Entering Advertising podcast. How are you doing today?
Man, I am doing great. Gino, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to talk to you. I really appreciate your podcast.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate what you do, and I'm very interested in it. Part of this whole podcast is to figure out how to get students into their dream job in advertising, right? And That's you good. Do that for a living. With the Job Propulsion Lab. You are the founder of it. You're the CEO. What is your direct title with the Job Propulsion Lab? And tell us what it is.
Well, I just call myself the founder. I'm not necessarily a CEO.
Sure.
We are a humble organization, and we're built on the whole idea that you should have the advertising career you're meant to have. Advertising is a challenging business. It's not for the faint of heart. But there are a lot of talented people that I think get discouraged from the very beginning. And I can tell you a little bit about how Job Propulsion Lab got started, and that might help you with the context of what we do, if you want me to go into that.
Yeah, please.
All right. So you can tell I'm an old Texas boy. And I went to school at Texas A&M Commerce. Commerce is a small city northeast of Dallas, about 70 miles. But my professor in school was a guy named Rob Lawton. And Rob was a creative director in Dallas. He drove up every Friday, taught all his classes on Friday. And Rob was a muse. Rob was the inspiration of so many great people in the business. And so he inspired me to always share with others the importance of craft, the importance of excellence. And I feel like it was a debt. So I mentored from early in my career. I started mentoring when I was about 25 years old, and I've been mentoring ever since. So I always had a dream that one day I'd be doing it on a more serious level to make a bigger impact. And one of my schoolmates is Brian Jesse. Brian and I went to school together at Texas A&M Commerce, both had Rob Lawton. And Rob was one of the founders of one of the better known schools in advertising, the Creative Circus. And that was headquartered in Atlanta. And I had an agency in Atlanta. I spent most of my career in Atlanta. I was there for 15 years. I had a couple of agencies that I was partners in. And Rob basically told me, you're going to teach at Creative Circus. Mm-hmm. And of course, he didn't have to ask. He just had to let me know. And I went and taught for several years there. And it was very beneficial. But one of the things that I noticed is that school curriculums and the academic model has some challenges for preparing people for the advertising industry on an individual level. So Brian and I talked about having a school for many years. Like, one of these days, we're going to build one in Austin. And I did a bunch of research and I found what was missing. We have a lot of schools in advertising, like the Creative Circus and Brand Center and Miami Ad School. And
Mm-hmm.
all of those are accredited master degree programs, and they have their purpose and their place. But what was missing is that segue into the industry. And then there's a lot of people that are very talented. They get an undergraduate degree, but they can't afford the additional costs of going to a graduate program. So I saw a real need, and I developed Job Propulsion Lab's platform from that. And it's one-on-one coaching. It's individually based, so I assess what people need on a personal basis, and then I coach them in that skill. And it has expanded. We started in 2012,
Mm-hmm.
and it immediately expanded from creatives to strategists. I've worked with people in the film industry, in photography, anything that was creatively related. I worked with people on that, and we worked with hundreds of people. We've done programs with South by Southwest and many of the other advertising industry conferences. So it's been very rewarding in that respect. But I think the secret sauce for us is individual one-on-one training. It
Okay.
accelerates learning. It makes learning much quicker. So instead of 2 years and 50 to 60K in
Mm-hmm.
tuition, it's 6 months of intense accelerated learning
Okay.
that cost a few $1,000s. So
Wow.
that's it in a nutshell.
Okay, so we got some main points of difference here. We got 6 months, individual learning. It's quick, it's fast paced. You do account, you do strategy, you do creative, you do art, and you cover basically all the potential roles in advertising. Am I correct on that?
That, that's right. The only thing that we really haven't done is like project management,
Sure.
media, but we still have mentors for that. And one of the things that I did is I recruited a lot of mentors. Now, my business partners own McGarrah Jesse Advertising. That's Brian Jesse and Mark McGarrah's agency in Austin, Texas.
Yep.
And, they're a great agency. They have wonderful culture. People stay there for years and years
It's a
because
really cool
they do
agency.
excellent. Yeah, they do excellent work, and they're human beings. I mean, they're an anomaly sometimes in an industry that can be known for not being that humane. And so I love working with Brian and Mark and all of the pros that are at McGarrah Jesse, and many of them volunteer to be mentors. And so they'll come in and
Mm-hmm.
they help. And one of the things that we do that is a little unique from the academic model is that we really professionally coach these people to come into the industry as a professional. Our goal is for them not to come in as some intern, but actually get a position. And we've had great success. And we have coached people that are still in school. They're
Mm-hmm.
either undergraduate, some are postgraduate. We've coached people that are in some of the better known schools as a supplement. And
Okay.
it has made a huge difference in the outcome of them coming into the industry.
Yes. Yeah,
We,
because
we
there's not a lot of training like when you first enter. Like once you're in a role, you get going, and agencies don't have time to train. They want somebody that's ready to go right away. So that's what you help with.
I do, and one of the things that I tell people, I go to the schools, and uh, I'm, I feel like we are a supplement that's needed specifically for some people more than others, but really everybody can benefit from a professional coach. It doesn't matter what industry you're in.
Mm-hmm.
But what we do is we train skills. We're not just coaches that encourage. We train skills. We work on soft skills as well as technical skills. And what we try to do is help people see where their weaknesses are and improve in that area, and then maximize their strengths.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's psychology involved in it, but there's also technical training involved in it.
Right, right. How many students do you usually mentor at a time? I know right now we're in a weird area with COVID. So whatever your pre-COVID numbers is it usually in person, like pre-COVID? Give us like the rundown and the logistics of the program.
That's a great question. Actually, we didn't have much adjustment to do when COVID hit. I've trained people literally in both hemispheres of the Americas and mentored people overseas through our free programs that we have. But so, for example, I have a senior designer that I coach who's in Toronto right now. I just finished a copywriter that was in Brazil.
Okay.
And we've done coast to coast from New York City to California.
Right.
And so what that prepared us for was COVID. So when COVID hit, we just kept rocking, you know, and the people, that's one of the other benefits. You don't have to move to Austin. You can do the thing remotely. Most of my students have been remote, or my proteges, I call them.
Sure.
And I would say that the benefit, that's another benefit. We don't take on too many people at one time because we really want people to get the intense training they need. And they need time. You go to college, you go to a class, you know what a class is like, and you might get 10 minutes of an instructor's time during each class period, maybe. And that's just not enough when you're training, like to be an art director or some other creative role. It's not enough time, but that's all they have for you.
Right.
So what we do is we do twice a week, 1 hour sessions that are scheduled, and then we're on call anytime they need us. And so we take on about a dozen to 15 people at a time, and we won't take more than that.
Okay.
And most of the time we're pretty booked up. You know, it has worked out really well that the right number of people are in. The other thing we try to do is balance it between different, skill sets. We'll have copywriters, designers, art directors, strategists, and we try to make it as real world as possible to have them have the experience they would have in the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. And it seems like I haven't seen another program similar to this in my research. So this seems like a really cool. Yeah, no, it's really good. Where do you see a lot of your protege alumni ending up? Those success stories.
We have been really, really successful. We have had you name the top agencies like 72 and Sunny, Giant Spoon, Crispin Porter, Boguski. I mean, all the agencies that come to mind.
You've got people there.
We've had somebody go to those agencies, but we've also had a lot of people go to companies like Apple and other companies
client side.
On the client side and do really well there too. But you can find that like on our website. We usually have I think we have a document that shows all the agencies. But like in your city, Leo Burnett, and several other agencies, we've mentored people that have either started there or ended up there.
Nice. And what is the role between JPL, Job Propulsion Lab, and McGarrah Jesse? Like you mentioned the founders like come in and talk. You're also in Austin. You're friends with the founders. Let's give me a brief description of this agency and like some of their clients. I know who they are, but I think they're really cool just from my perspective. Tell us about McGarrah Jesse, who they are, and then their role with you and the lab.
Well, I tell you, the thing that's so great about McGarrah Jesse is really the founders, Mark McGarrah and Brian Jesse. Their background, Mark is on the strategy side, of course, and then Brian is on the creative side, and they work together at two agencies in Texas, the Richards Group and GSD&M. And they meshed, even though they weren't a creative team. And a lot of times agencies start as some creative team decides to start an agency. And I have the highest respect for these men because they have built a nationally recognized agency, an internationally recognized agency on a couple of principles: excellence of work. Their clients include like Whataburger, Costa sunglasses. They worked on Yeti, Shiner beer. They turned into a brand. I mean, their work for Shiner was excellent for years and years and years. And most of the clients that they have stay with them for over a decade and sometimes 2 decades.
Yeah,
In
I see
fact, they
Zippo,
have,
Lyft, GameStop.
yeah, right. And they keep clients a long time because they get amazing results with their work. One of the things, I think the biggest strength that Mark and Brian have instilled in that company is that they hire people with incredible talent,
Hmm.
but the right mindset. And when I said they are humane, I
Hmm.
mean, it's all about your integrity, your empathy, your character. They want to work with people they want to work with, client side and employee side. And so they've attracted people that have literally stayed there 10, 15, 20 years, and their work does not wane. It continues to be at an excellent thing. You just like going in there. Now, how we got started was Brian and I started talking, and I showed him my research on doing something like Job Propulsion Lab, which I had come up with the year before. I showed it to him, and we had been talking about the school, but he saw that and he said, we've got to show this to Mark. So we
Hmm.
did. And they called me, and I was a partner in an agency at the time. But I was thinking about doing this. I mean, it was definitely a step away from the income that I was used to as an agency
Sure.
owner, but it was
Yeah.
a labor of love that I wanted to do before too much time passed. And so Mark and Brian said, we want to do this. And I said, okay, well, when would you like to start? And they said, how about 2 weeks?
Oh, nice. Nice.
So I said, well, I kind of need to go talk to my partners. And
Sure.
so I did. I went and I talked to my business partners, and they knew that I was working on doing something like this eventually. And so they said, yeah, if you really want to go do this, we don't blame you. You need to do what your heart says.
Yeah, that's good on
So we
them.
started, like I said. So I packed up, moved to Austin. I kept my footprint very small so I could afford to do it. We all
Yep.
invested money to keep it going for a year, but within a year we were rocking it and had it going. And what I love about it is that we do have a small footprint as an entity, but what that does is it makes us very flexible. We're flexible on what our programs is, what curriculum we're going to use. I do a lot of review with the proteges that we do to continue to improve it. We've done an
Sure.
online course. We do a lot of free things. We work with a lot of groups like E for Youth in Austin to help
Mhm.
to help underserved
Oh,
individuals
beautiful.
find their way into creative careers.
Beautiful.
Uh, and also with all the universities. We're what we're trying to do is make someone ask me, why are you doing this? I've done a lot of things in my career. My friends would go, because my agency in Atlanta, for example, we had the Ritz-Carlton Hotel. That was one of our kind of premier accounts. We did
Great account.
James Hardy siding. We turned it into a brand, and it became the leading home siding company in the world.
Nice.
Things like that, or at least in America. I don't know if it's
Sure.
the world,
Sure.
but they probably are. But so we had a highly recognized, the 4A's named us like in 2001 or two, I think, as one of the most creative agencies in the country. We were a small agency, but we were on the stage with BBDO and Crispin Porter Brogusky. And, we had a great shop, and it was named Sawyer Riley Compton, which doesn't exist now. It was bought. We sold it to a larger agency. But the fact is that what we were trying to do there, I wanted to do with JPL, which is provide an environment that fosters learning, that rewards excellence, and that encourages people to believe. Because the number one thing that holds a creative career back from a person is their fear. And we coached people all the way from in college, all the way to senior level people to improve their careers. And they all have that common denominator.
Hmm.
They're starting to not believe, they're starting to fear. And especially young people today that I see trying to get into the business, there's a lot of fear out there of what should I do? Am I good enough to do this? That type of thing. And I see that a lot when I go and do my workshops at universities and at conferences. So I wanted us to have something that was a kind of a new way of doing it. It's been tremendously successful. It's not as scalable as a school, but I told Mark and Brian, I want to change the industry. I want to make the industry look at the way we're doing this. And we're still working on that to make the industry more, I guess, more encouraging to people getting into the business rather than, well, you have to earn your stripes. Well, yeah, sure you do. You have to earn your stripes, but you don't have to be inhumane about it in helping people earn their stripes.
Absolutely.
And then on the other side of it, what we wanted to do is accelerate the process and keep it affordable so that people that maybe are underserved, people that just, my kids went to college and I paid for some of it, but I kind of made a deal with them. I said, if you really want a college education, you've got to pay for some of it. You got to have skin in the game.
Yeah, love that.
Well, even with them doing that, they had to pay off their school loans. And I read on a thread this morning on Fishbowl. I don't know if you get on Fishbowl or Reddit or any of those, but they have advertising bowls. And I read this guy was considering going to one of these schools, and he said, I'm going to have to take out a $70,000, $80,000 loan.
For what?
And someone else commented on it and said, I did it. And some days I regret it because I'm going to be paying this off. That 80 grand
for what?
For get into
undergrad?
advertising? No, for graduate school.
Oh, like VCU or what? Who's paying?
I don't know. I'm not going to name the agency or the entity they
you
were
don't
naming.
Know. Yeah, okay.
But and I don't know what all they were going to borrow 80 grand for.
Right.
I don't know.
That could be relocation. That could be supplies. That could be, all the software.
All in. Let's say it's all in.
It's too much.
Yeah. Well, when you consider an undergrad too, a lot of people are borrowing money for undergrad. And like I said, with my children, they did undergrad and even they had minimal loans, but it still took them years to pay it off.
Right.
And in some cases I helped after they got the degree, but it's just not right to expect somebody to invest $150K in an education to get in an industry that doesn't really value that degree. They really want to work. Work.
It's a great point. So what are the options then for students? So we know like your lab, we know like, so do they just work hard on their own? Like what advice do you have for students? Either if they have the money, they want to commit to something like a big time grad school or they want to take a cheaper route. Like what are give us all the options, not just JPL.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I want you to know that I encourage people to get a degree. I am not saying don't bother.
Right.
I just think that it has gotten my theories about why it's gotten the way it's gotten as far as the expense goes, and that it takes 6 years instead of 4 years. It took me 4 years, and I was ready. I had a portfolio. I was ready to go in 4 years, and actually I was ready in 2 years because the first 2 years I was a fine art major. So I didn't even take advertising courses until the final 2 years.
Gotcha.
But I think the options are, I encourage people to get the undergraduate degree. Definitely. You need that for maturity's sake, for a lot of other things, that not just the skill set, but don't expect it to be enough. You have two options. You can do something like JPL, and there are some smaller portfolio type schools that sell a la carte
packages.
They sell those. What they don't do, and I know somebody, I'm friends with somebody that has one of these entities, and he told me, yeah, we don't do what you do because we really train people how to be a professional, and so we walk them step by step. We walk with them step by step on getting them all the way through the job hunting process, how to interview.
Yeah.
We do mock interviews for them. We do that. And the schools are getting better in some cases for helping in that regard. The number one thing that I see that people say, this is why you should go to one of these graduate programs. Network.
Yeah.
Oh, they're connected. And
Yeah.
there's some undergraduate programs that are very well connected.
There are not a lot, but there's like 10 that are very, like, you'll be good. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's why I said there are some.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's not a lot. I agree. And in fact, I think a lot of universities shouldn't have a program. It's not really set up to succeed, to help them succeed. And unfortunately, they don't know that. The students going in don't know it. But there are some that are well connected. Their students graduate, their students go to good places, the students get a good start. Even then, the percentage of those is low, much lower than those schools would want to admit.
Sure.
And I know why. I mean, it's not just on the school, it's on the individual themselves. You get out of it what you put into
right,
it.
Right.
But I tell people, if you want to, like, I have actually encouraged some people, go ahead, go get your master's. I mean, I had one person that she was thinking about going to one of the better known graduate programs. She was looking at everything, and she looked at JPL, and she said, I'm going to do JPL. And I said, well, why? And she said, I don't need a master's degree to do what I want to do. And this does the same thing. And I said, well, I agree, of course. But at the same time, I tell people, but don't not do it if there's something yearning in you to get a master's degree. It does help later if you do have a teacher gene in you to have a master's degree. If you want to teach on an academic level, that definitely is a plus. And some roles like strategy, having a master's degree is a great asset.
Yeah.
The network is yeah. So I would say yes, the network. But that was the thing about the thread that I read this morning. One of the people said, yes, this place is it's the network. That's what you're paying for. And I thought, and they were talking about $80K for a network. And I was like, that just doesn't seem right to me, that's the primary reason that people that were graduates of the place said that's why you should go.
Yeah.
It wasn't, you were going to get the most intense, overwhelming training that you've ever had. Now, I will tell you the reason for that is that educators need to be paid better. I was talking to someone that I know this guy was legendary in my younger days in the industry, and now he's teaching at a university. And he said, I'm packed. My classes are packed, but he said, but I can't make a living doing this. I have to do others. I know from personal experience that. And JPL is not like this money-making factory. It's a labor of love. But let me tell you, there's more things than money. And I was an agency owner, but I didn't get rich off of it. And the industry can be that way. But there are things that when you wake up in the morning, you're excited to do it, and when you go to bed at night, you're excited about what you've done. And advertising can be one of those. Here's the key: you have to start in the right place. This is a young business. The number one thing I tell people is your first 2 jobs will dictate the rest of your career. Now, it's not set in stone, but that's the overwhelming reality of it.
That's your foundation. You want it built on something strong that will support a long, healthy career, rather built on quicksand where it's like,
right.
I always think of like on LinkedIn, when you see those marketing sales jobs and all caps, like hiring right now, $100,000, they'll lie to you and people might get fooled into that and those sales schemes.
Well, and when you're young and you're going into the business, you're so excited about it that you can see it through rose-colored glasses. And so like my first agency job, I remember I was so passionate about doing great work. And the agency where I was, we weren't doing the greatest work. And I remember naively going in to the CEO's office. It was a smaller agency, so we were a family, and everybody there was really great. But I went in to the man that was in his 60s. So he was I was like 22. And I told him, I said, if we would just take, be allowed to take more, innovative work to the client, we would do better work,
Sure.
And this man looked at me and he said, Bart, I'm going to tell you my philosophy of advertising.
What is that?
The client signs the check on one side and I sign it on the other.
Yep.
And I really loved the people at that place, but I realized that I was in the wrong place.
Sure.
Because I realized that philosophy and my philosophy didn't mesh. And so I worked there for another year and a half before I went to a place that did better work. But let me tell you, that was one of the reasons why it was a year and a half, was because I had to overhaul my portfolio, because it was filling up with mediocre work that I was proud of because I worked really hard on it. But I didn't have anybody telling me, Bart, this is where the flaw is. Here's where your flaws are. I was having to learn that on my own. And that process is too slow. You can't be a
Very
late
slow.
bloomer in this business. You
Very
can't
slow.
learn it by trial and error. You need somebody that will show you the way. And that's why if you get in the right place with your first job, you're going to go further faster. If you don't do that on your first job and you realize it, when you go to your second job, if you go to a similar place, and a lot of people have run away from a bad job to another bad job.
Sure.
They hate the first job so much that they don't look clearly at the second, and they end up repeating history. And so I tell people, the third job, now you have to show your professional work. And if your professional work is mediocre from those first two jobs, you're mediocre. This business, I say, we're in a business of imagination. We create things, and yet we have no imagination when it comes to hiring people. We want to see it in the portfolio. If it's not in the portfolio, the person can't do it. And we've even hired people. I've hired people with portfolios and later go, "Who did your portfolio?" Because it wasn't you.
Wow.
So I would say that I tell people, this is why your training, the school you go to, how much time you put into it, and any additional coaching or training that you get, internships are critical. It's because you don't have much of a window of time. You have to really get in the right place at the right time. Now, I'm not saying there have been late bloomers. I consider myself one that succeeded, but it was out of sheer determination. And I have a rock hard head. When you tell me you can't do it, I'm just going to show you I can. But a lot of people, they're not like that. They get discouraged and they think, they believe I'm not good enough. Well, everybody puts their pants on one leg at a time. Nobody's floating. And so I tell people, there are geniuses out there. I've met some, I've been friends with some in this business that I consider genius. And I know I'm in the presence of genius. But let me tell you, Mozart comes around every 1,000 years. There's not very many. If you know anything about Mozart, he was like a prodigy. He was like a savant.
Yeah.
He didn't write he wrote symphonies in his head and did one draft because he was that much of a savant.
Started like when he was like 4 or 5, right? You wrote like his first piece. Yeah.
Right. Whereas Beethoven, who was equally renowned, you should see his manuscripts of his symphonies. I mean, they are a mess because he's making constant adjustments, constant changes. So I tell people, yeah, there are Mozarts out there, but they're very uncommon. They come around every millennia. So the rest of it we're just working slobs.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Don't give up on yourself,
And you can see, and you could probably see, I think Beethoven was blind. So you got an advantage over Beethoven right there.
Yeah, Beethoven was deaf.
Oh, no way. Yeah. I forgot about that.
Yeah, Beethoven went deaf.
That's crazy.
Which is crazy.
Yeah.
But he
worked hard.
He was playing the music in his head. He couldn't hear it, but he knew what the sound was.
Right. Right. Interesting.
Anyway, I better not speak too much about classical music because I know very little, but I do know those two stories,
Yeah.
and they relate, and we need to believe, okay, I can be a Beethoven if I work hard enough, if I believe long enough,
Mm-hmm.
and if you surround yourself with the right team, you will succeed. I had someone tell me the other day, my agency did really well as far as the creative recognition we got in Atlanta. And I had someone tell me, yeah, you were kind of a big deal back in Atlanta and back then. And I said, I was just surrounded by really good people.
Yeah.
Um, and what happens is people start to see the opportunity. And that's what McGarrah Jesse does. They show people there's an opportunity. There's a really interesting story here. A few years back, a lot of really popular advertising agencies don't have to even post jobs. They have so many people
Right.
applying even when there's not a job. Well, McGarrah Jesse is one of those, but they grew really fast. And so they posted 2 entry-level jobs. In 10 days, they had 200 applicants.
Yep.
And so
Amazing.
the chief creative officer came to me and he said, Bart, can you help me with this? I'm really busy. Can you help me kind of understand who we should talk to first? And I said, yeah. So I worked with the HR department and I went through all the books and I graded them ABC. A is definitely take a look at this person. B is they've got something going, but I don't know if they're ready for you. And C was don't bother. A had 8 people.
Wow.
8. That's less than 5% of the
Wow.
200. And so what I tell people, this is very common. If you're not in the 5%, you're not going to be considered for the job. So your portfolio, your work, your abilities, and your professionalism have to separate you from 95% of applicants.
Right.
Now, here's the interesting thing. I looked at everybody's resume, everything, and over 70% of the applicants had experience. They were in the business. And this was for 2 entry-level jobs. Now, why in the world would somebody with 2 to 5 years apply for a job that's entry level? It's because they are in the wrong place and
Right.
they are willing to start over. So I told people, if you want a job, a great job at a great place, you're not just competing with people coming out of school like
Your
you are.
age. Yep.
You're competing with people with experience. They want that job too. So you have to come across as a professional. So the work you do, the craft you can produce, your professionalism, all matter.
Yep.
And so that's what we work on. We work on all of those aspects to help people be attractive candidates. And I am so proud of one of my latest proteges. She was going to one of these graduate schools. I met her. I did a mentor thing for a month, and she was going back to school. And she said, "Can I take your program while I'm going to school?" And I said, "Why
Wow.
do you want to do that?" And she said, "Because you're teaching me things that I'm not getting there." And I said, "Okay, well, that's fine." So she took the program and it made a huge difference. Now she was an art director, so she was working on craft, and it was the craft that we focused on. How to be a better at your craft. And and I kept telling her, she would get despondent. She was so hard on herself, and she would say, she'd get discouraged. And I said, "You're going to rock it when you get out of here." I said,
Yep.
"Look at your book. Look at how fast it's transforming."
Yeah.
When she got out, she had, I think, 4 or 5 job offers
Wow. Nice.
within a couple of weeks. And I talked to her and I said, don't be surprised. You put the work in. And she was a consummate professional. She got along with everyone she worked with. And she had some partners that were challenging, I can
Sure.
tell you, at the school she went to as well, because I heard the stories. But I told her, I said, that's the way the business is going to be. You're not going to
Mhm.
work with everybody that's perfect.
Yep.
And so you got to know how to manage it. So
Yep.
she rocked it. She rocked it. And I do have people that do get multiple offers,
Offers. Yeah.
but she was an exceptional.
Love that.
That
So
to me is because she invested. She invested in herself. And so
yeah,
remember, invest in yourself.
you get what you give. And that goes from undergraduate when you're, a lot of times you could be an advertising major and you do that because you don't like math and it's a generally easy path for undergraduate, whereas group projects. But the harder you work as an undergraduate, the better your book or, your account resume will be. And then if you need to do that again and you go to another higher level education system, that's even more important because then you're creating your book and then it just goes from there. What, Bart, with your program, you spoke very well about it, and I love it. I think it's something unique where it's different from a lot of portfolio schools. It's more personal. It sounds to me it's more personalized. It's more tailored to you as a human, one-on-one experience, which is great. You're tied together to McGarrah Jesse, which is an agency I want to work for one day. So I will talk
Yeah.
to you in the future in about 3 to 5 years from now.
Happy
I
to do
think
it.
what resources do you follow that make you so successful? What keeps you hungry? Like, give us like some things that keeps your creativity flowing throughout your career, because you've been doing this for some time now.
Yes, I have. And that is a great question. And I have coached people that are further along in their career. And one of the dangers is to start thinking, well, I've accomplished some things, so I should be able to coast.
No coast. Yeah.
There's no coasting in this business. And you know what? I think insatiable curiosity is the greatest trait you can have to succeed in advertising. And I am insatiably curious. I am curious about everything. And so I read a lot. I love Audible, by the way, because it
Sure.
maximizes my reading potential. But I just try to stand on the shoulders of giants. So I know this industry intimately. I know the history of it. Who were those that pioneered the creativity that we see in our industry now? I think that's important.
History.
But
Yeah, I love
also
that.
know what's going on. I tell people, know, especially people that are further along in their career, know what's going on and what's on the horizon and what the future is. Now, I've always been kind of an early adopter, especially of technology. I asked my wife one time, what was the one thing that surprised you about me? Then we had been married, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years, not that long. And she said that you would be a computer nerd.
Ah,
And because when I was in school, there was no Macintosh.
right.
But right after I got in the business, the Mac came out. And I immediately went and bought a $3,000 Macintosh that basically did nothing. It
Yeah,
was a word processor that you could draw little bitmap things on.
sure.
And I paid $3,000 for it. And I paid it $30 a month for 3 years to
Wow.
have it. And before I got it paid off, I went and bought another one. I bought a Mac too. So and I was so crazy about it. And my creative director said, "You better never use a computer to do anything." And I said, "This is the future.
Right.
This is the future." And so 6 months later, he sent me to the first like Mac World conference in New York City.
Mm-hmm.
And we became one of the first agencies in the Southeast US to use the Macintosh. So
So
I've been an early adopter. Be an early adopter.
adapter. Yep. And new technology and any what else? New technology is probably what comes to my head probably the most, but any new methods too, probably that are published.
Another thing, yes. And I would say in our industry, this is what I tell people, especially creatives and especially young creatives, because one of the things I see that is a common denominator in a lot of portfolios is they'll have good ideas in there, but they're all for themselves. In other words, they're the target audience.
Right.
Well, millennials or Gen Zs are not the only people on the
And
planet.
right.
And I tell people, you need to be a character actor. In
Yep.
other words, when you think about somebody like De Niro or Meryl Streep, they get lost in the role they play. They're great at absorbing the character. And at my agency in Atlanta, I had a writer that was 35 years old. He's a 35-year-old man, and he wrote ads, and the audience were 35-year-old housewives. And the client was like, nobody is going to believe that you're writing these ads, because they were so in tune. He was a great character actor when it came to being a creative. So I tell people, absorb who you're talking to, become them, and know everything there is about the product. What connects people to a brand is the truth that they believe in, and they see it in the product, the brand. Yeah. And that's the thing about, well, I'll go back to Apple. When they kicked Steve Jobs out of Apple, I thought they're dead. And I watched them falter over the next, I don't know, 8-9 years. And then they brought Steve Jobs back. And I thought, he's going to revolutionize that place. He's not going to let the company he started die. Right. And he did it. And that's the kind of attitude you have to have, because he knew who his customer was. Right. It was the person that thought differently. And so when he came out with Think Different, with that manifesto about here's to the crazy ones, I wanted to stand up and cheer, because I felt like I was one of the crazy ones. Thank you for coming back. Thank you for wanting to save what was dear to me, because it was revolutionary. It was the computer for the rest of us. So I believed in the mission. And I read one time that Steve Jobs wanted, he knew knowledge was power, and he knew the computer was the instrument to give people knowledge, and he wanted people to know that. I read that somewhere. I can't remember where now. Sure. But that's the thing. I want to believe. People want to believe in brands, so you want to be able to connect people to brands, and to do that, you have to know who they are. Yep.
So do your research. Become them. Become a method actor. Right. I love that.
That's right. Method actor.
What? Okay. How can people reach out to you? We're nearing time here. So how can people reach out to you, learn more about Job Propulsion Lab, find out more information? Where do they go?
It's pretty easy. You can just email me at Bart, B-A-R-T, at jobpropulsionlab.com. Yep. You can jump on jobpropulsionlab.com, and you can take any of our resources. We have free resources. We have a free course. It's 3 videos that will help you get you started. Yep. We have free critique. I really recommend that, because I usually spend about an hour in a video session with somebody, going over their work, talking about their. Our free critique is worth something.
That's awesome. Everybody should do that. If you have a book, or you do that. So awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Bart. This has been great.
And that's, or you can just call the number that's on there, on the website. I'll pick up the phone. Yep. Job Propulsion Lab, like I said, we're not some big entity. We didn't intend to be. We intended to make a difference. And I want to go back and reiterate that we are not an alternative necessarily to the academic model. We are an alternative to getting you started on an accelerated path. That's why we're Job Propulsion Lab. We want the trajectory of your career to be what it should be, so you can have the career you're meant to have.
And you've said it well, and we are very grateful. Thank you for coming on. And everybody, if you like Austin and great food, music, I mean, I want to end up there eventually too. So it's just a great package in general. So go check them out. Bart, that's all I got for you. Thank you so much for coming on. I can have the students reach out to you. I'll keep that all into our Instagram account at Entering Ed. But this has been great.
Listen, it's an honor to be on your podcast. I hope that I've been able to help someone in this. And if they want to reach out, I'd love to hear from them.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day. Thank you all for listening to this entire episode of the Breaking and Entering Advertising podcast. I hope you enjoyed this week's guest. Make sure you go and connect with them on LinkedIn. Tell them that Breaking and Entering sent you. Now, thank you to Mikey Malarkey, our audio technician, and Buchun Zhang, our creative director, as well as the student team from the Midnight Oil Agency at the University of Illinois. Can't do it without you all. Thank you very much. We will see you all next week with another amazing guest.